So it's really a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to see a lot of familiar faces, some new faces, and really edified by Kevin's talk. My prayer this morning in the chapel was, at least let me be somewhere in the wheelhouse. And I think you'll notice a lot of consistent themes. I'm hoping to engage some of the same issues more from the parish level than the chancery level. But I think you'll see a lot of connections between the two. So as Father mentioned, I currently have a new job. I just started at the Archdiocese of Boston in December, where I serve as an evangelization consultant. It's kind of an ambiguous title, but my job is effectively to help parishes and parish staffs do the best work they can in the business of making disciples. So whether that's faith formation programs, small group, youth ministry, etc. Prior to that, I worked at a parish here in the Archdiocese, first as director of discipleship, which is a faith formation job. And then I transitioned into finance and operations director. And I mention that because what has kind of become my interest is that intersection point of evangelization and parish operations. I think there's a lot that happens at that intersection point. I certainly don't have all of the answers, but it's something I enjoy reflecting upon, and hopefully can share a few ideas with you today. So what I'm hoping to do is first kind of set the stage of where we are as a church in the current moment. Again, I think you'll notice a lot of consistent themes, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, so to speak, but I think it's important that we recognize where we're at. From there, I want to basically today I'm going to be talking about stewardship and sustainability. So I kind of want to define and position stewardship from the parish level as cultivating God's gifts in a broad sense of the word. And then from there, paint a vision a little bit for what a sustainable parish looks like. In so doing, in that exercise, I'd like to explore some opportunities for and the implications of clergy and laity working together. And my hope is, whether or not you agree with my vision of what a sustainable parish looks like, I think we can have a lot of healthy debate on that. That's fine. I'm using that as the vehicle as some concrete ideas to start a conversation for what kind of co-responsibility looks like. And then finally, maybe review some tips and takeaways. And I'm really hoping to engage with your questions and have a discussion. So without further ado, perfect. So a bit of where we find ourselves, the State of the Union. In bucket one, in parish life and ministry, in the kind of current cultural milieu, I feel that we are in an age of rising secularism. I suspect most of you would agree. And that creates a pain point, I think, in the way that parishes interact with the community. It is what it is. It's where we're at, but I think it's definitely present. The second is spiritual apathy. And what I mean by that is particularly in the post-COVID landscape. When you look at the mass attendance decline after the pandemic, I thought for a long time that it was people who were mad, right? Oh, I don't want to go to church anymore because of X, Y, or Z. Where I've come to understand and really believe that attrition in mass attendance is just apathy. People got out of the habit of going to Mass and thus no longer go to Mass. So I don't think it's a pejorative thing. I think there's a lot of spiritual apathy that we have to wrestle with. The next is, this might seem like a bit of an outlier, youth sports and activities. My job gives me the pleasure, the opportunity to speak with pastors from all over the Archdiocese. And in every single conversation, this is what I hear. We can't win the fight against families' time when it comes to sports. And I'm noticing more and more, I live in Natick in the Metro West area. Sports on Sundays, which never used to be a thing, is everywhere, soccer fields, hockey rinks, etc. So I think that's something we have to contend with. Prior to getting into ministry, I was a salesman for a couple different industries. So if I use business buzzwords again, I apologize. But I think we have an unproven value proposition from the parish level. Basically, what that means is The value proposition being Jesus Christ is Lord, and if you develop a relationship with him, your life will be better. That value proposition isn't communicated, it isn't received. And I think that's another source of kind of difficulties. And then as I mentioned, no surprise here, declining mass attendance. From the operational perspective, at least here in Boston, and I suspect in many other dioceses throughout the United States, is the issue of aging infrastructure. And a lot of it, which of course creates a financial drain at the parish level, certainly at the diocesan level as well. Deferred maintenance to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. Unfortunately, there's a history of kicking issues down the curb, and then they kind of come to a head at a time, usually during a crisis point, which can cause significant issues to parish finances. Staff burnout and fatigue, which Kevin was spot on with his treatment of that, absolutely. The reality of consistent offertory shortfalls and limited clergy. So I think that the current situation is somewhat of a perfect storm of challenges. And in order to meet the needs of today, clergy and laity really have to work together to change the culture of contemporary parish life. So as I was preparing for this, I have become a card-carrying member of the Pope Leo fan club. And I decided to take a look to see what he thinks on said topics. And I was delighted to see these quotes from a recent seminar he addressed, the Evangelizing with Families of Today. First, it says, as you can see, ours is a time marked by a growing search for spirituality, particularly evident in young people who are longing for authentic relationships and guides in life. Hence, it is important that the Christian community be far-sighted in discerning the challenges of today's world and in nurturing the desire for faith present in the heart of every man and woman. What I want to focus on there is the far-sightedness. We need to look out into the future, both as ordained clergy and as lay ministers, be it professional ministers or parishioners. We need to look out and instead of seeing where we're at the moment, begin to anticipate the needs of tomorrow as best we can. And I think it's critical that that far-sightedness happen at the point of interaction between people in various states of life and vocations. The second one is a wonderful quote. It is the responsibility of the bishops, and I would say by extension, of course, the priests, to be the first to cast their nets into the sea and become fishers of families. Yet the laity are also called to participate in this mission and to become, alongside ordained ministers, fishers of couples, young people, children, women and men of all ages and circumstances, so that they may encounter the one Savior. Of course, we hear a lot in Scripture, fishers of men, and that is a wonderful image, absolutely. But I love thinking about fishing for families, young adults, disaffected Catholics, those who have been burdened by the sexual abuse crisis, whatever it may be. I think we need to be more intentional about how we fish for them at the parish level. The final point is, has anyone read From Christendom to Apostolic Mission? If you remember nothing else from my talk today, please just buy this book. I think it is one of the most erudite and timely works that has been written on the present state of the church in the past 10, 15 years. It's written by Monsignor James Shea from the University of Mary, and I can't say enough good things about it. I'm not here to pitch the book, but I do suggest you give it a read. Basically, what Monsignor Shea surmises is the church can exist in two modes of operation. The first is Christendom, and that's when the church exists within a society that accepts and is built upon Christian values. Think Europe in the Middle Ages, where we had kings who were also leader of the church. Catholicism, Christianity is the state religion, even up until as recent as the 1940s, 1950s to some degree. The Christendom is the operative mode. It's very easy to be a church in Christendom insofar as the society allows you to be church, right? But at the same time, if that's the status quo, in Christendom, we get a little tired. We don't work as hard. We know that our churches are full, like Kevin had said, or that there's ample clergy, etc. So we kind of become apathetic. Monsignor Shea says, and I agree with him completely, that we're currently living in an apostolic mode of culture and cultural engagement, such that we live in a society that is not welcoming of Christianity, not built upon, or increasingly not built upon Christian values, and where it becomes harder to engage with the general public. So some earmarks of what an apostolic mode of existence looks like: it's countercultural, very much resembles the early church. It's marked by urgency. Personal witness is of crucial importance, testimony. Tends to be more of a purity of intention and more of a threshold and a demand for risk, taking bold steps to engage with culture, with society. It also has the ability to be spiritually vibrant if done right, but at the same time faces resource scarcity, persecution, and burnout. So I think we're in an apostolic mode. In fact, I'm convicted of it. What that means for us today is parish life is fundamentally different than it was, not just, in the 40s or the 50s or the 30s, fundamentally different than it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before the pandemic. Novel challenges require novel solutions, and perhaps most especially renewed cooperation between clergy and laity. So that's the state of affairs, as it were. So now, kind of shift our attention to what stewardship looks like, particularly at the parish level. I think stewardship is one of those terms that we throw around a lot, but can mean a lot of different things to different people. So when I was searching to try to land on kind of a central theme, the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops has a pastoral letter on stewardship, which I thought was fantastic. And the bishops define stewardship as the following: safeguarding material and human resources and using them responsibly are one answer. So is generous giving of time, talent, and treasure. We've all heard those three terms before, I'm sure. But they say being a Christian steward means more. As Christian stewards, we receive God's gifts gratefully, cultivate them responsibly, share them lovingly in justice with others, and return them with increase, with interest to the Lord. I think that helps us understand what stewardship must be in this current apostolic mode. It can't mean just money. It has to mean people as well. And what I mean by that is lay parishioners stepping up to play a role in evangelizing in a major way. This is something that our church, I think, traditionally hasn't done very well, meaning equipping laity for evangelization. I think that's why my office exists, and we do our best, but we're a team of 4 with 250 parishes in the Archdiocese. There are many priests and many laity who get this and are effective evangelizers, but I think that we have a lot of work to do. We need to view stewardship in a broader light, insofar as at the parish level, we steward it through our gifts of finances, but also through our gifts of self in stepping up to be evangelizers. So I was trying to think about a way to package how I view parish stewardship. And I came up with a 3-legged stool analogy. I think of each of those stools as different, but integrally important to the mission of parish. One is operating finances, offertory, right? That's the lion's share of how a parish is fueled for mission. As I was kind of suggesting, the second is volunteer development, how we equip disciples for mission and how we create layers of leadership in the parish setting. I'll talk a bit more about that later. And the third, I think this one is oft forgotten, is non-operating finances. So by that I mean major gifts, right? Seeking development opportunities for capital expenditures or for major projects. Also, and this can be a difficult conversation, but soliciting gifts and bequests from estates as well. These three components kind of form the stool of parish stewardship. But every chair I know of sits upon a foundation. It is not in a amorphous box of nothingness, right? This is the key. I think that stool must sit upon a foundation upon an encounter with Jesus Christ. When I was doing a little research for this and investigating stewardship, the scriptural reference that comes up a lot is the parable of the talents, which of course is wonderful, and there's a lot to be gained from there. I'd like to suggest that we think about the road to Emmaus. We know the story. The disciples are walking along. Jesus comes to accompany them, and they don't recognize the Lord until the breaking of the bread. And at that moment, they have an encounter with him such that their lives are changed. And they run out, go meet the 11, and say, Jesus is risen. What is crucial there is that encounter, right? It's not the disciples saying, okay, well, I'll go to Mass today because my mom did and my grandmother did, and that's just what Catholics do. Or I'm guilty, I had that Catholic guilt, so I'm just going to go to satisfy that, right? They go out on mission after being changed by an encounter. And I submit to you that our parishes must be singularly focused on the business, quote unquote, of facilitating encounters. Each person according to their vocation, ordained or not. That must be the central focus of how parishes operate in this current apostolic and mode of engagement. And kind of what that looks like is first, wrong button here. Encountering Christ happens first. By encountering Christ, we become disciples. Part of discipleship is stewardship, and stewardship leads to sustainability. And I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button, but here's my fancy three-legged stool graphic. And again, I'd be happy to send this out to anyone. So, again, encountering Christ leads to discipleship. Discipleship entails stewardship, and stewardship leads to sustainability. So, kind of my thesis here is sustainable parishes facilitate encounters with Jesus Christ. Again, my goal here is to cast a vision or present a roadmap for how parishes can become sustainable and facilitate these encounters. But really what I'm interested in doing along the way is examine those unique opportunities for clergy and laity to work together to make that effective, to implement the three-legged chair, but also facilitate encounters. And you'll notice that that three-legged chair analogy is embedded into these 5 steps. So, the first step, create a culture of encounter. And by that I mean inspire discipleship. I think it's critically important for parishes of all means to invest in vibrant, reverent, sacramental life. That is the core of everything. That is the core of the Road to Emmaus narrative. The breaking of the bread is the sacramental life right there. In addition to that, I think it's fundamentally important for parishes to invest in and to introduce the kerygma to all parishioners. You can do that in a multitude of different ways. I put a couple examples. Alpha is one, if you're familiar with that program. Christ Life is another. The Augustine Institute has a program called The Search, which can be used for the same thing. Basically, these are tools for equipping parishioners to be kerygmatic evangelists. And that's something we need to invest in. What's beautiful about 1 and 2 there is 1 is contingent upon or directly impacts clergy, right? They can be certainly supported by lay ministers, but fundamentally, the liturgy and sacramental life is the duty of the priest. The charismatic evangelization is the work of everyone, of course, shepherded by our pastors, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity there for parishioners to step up and aid and become effective charismatic evangelizers. I am a major fan of and proponent of small group discipleship. I think this is something that our Protestant brothers and sisters have done to great effect over the past 20, 25 years. And there's no reason that we can't do the same. Full disclosure, when I first heard of small group discipleship, I think I was in high school, my knee-jerk reaction was, that's Protestant, we don't do that. Then I got to Boston University and I got engaged with a small group, and the rest, as they say, is history, right? My former boss, pastor, used to say that small groups are where the big church gets small. And those small groups are opportunity not only for evangelization, but pastoral support. We know clergy are stretched extremely thin. The priest can't be everything to everyone, as Kevin said. But if we depute our brothers and sisters to minister to others via small groups, there's an embedded level of pastoral care that can happen without the priest's involvement. Now, of course, some things are reserved to the priesthood, absolutely. But I think this is a way that the hands of the pastor can be made larger. Ensuring authentic and welcoming hospitality. I have a friend who is a religious brother, and he served all over the United States. And he has a particular term of endearment for those of us who are Northeast United States Catholics, the frozen chosen. I think if you go to most parishes in New England, you're met with an icy morning, hey, how are you, type of thing, right? We need to be better at ensuring welcoming, authentic hospitality. And this is something that laity by nature can do very well if they're told to do it and if they're modeled to do it, right? This is one of the ways that we can prove that value proposition, right? We can show we're relevant and show that we're a community that they should be involved in by making it welcoming for them, right? Cast vision, cast vision, cast vision. Pastors, as the leader of parishes, I think need to invest heavily on casting vision for what they want the parish to be. And to really spend time on crystallizing that. A mission statement, we've heard of those, right? Vision statements. But casting vision is constantly returning to that to orient all the work of the parish to that end. And that, I think, is a really important job of our pastors today, to really invest in making that crystal clear and that each and every opportunity sharing that with the faithful. Another idea is discerning and establishing a systematic, particular discipleship pathway. There's lots of books on this that you can read. That their names escape me at the moment. But what I like about the discipleship pathway, in meeting with a lot of parishes, it seems like in many of them, there's a million things going on, right? There's the women's sodality and the rosary group and youth ministry and X, Y, and Z. And they're all there, which is great. But how do they fit together? What is the arc of discipleship in the parish? And furthermore, there are many different stakeholders at the parish who need different pathways. What I mean by that is the needs of the lapsed Catholic are very different than those of the unbaptized, the uninitiated. They're very different than those who are existing faithful disciples, maybe youth, or those who are lukewarm. I think we really need to double down and think strategically about, if I am someone showing up at St. Pius for the first time, I've never been to church before, what is my road to discipleship going to be? I'm going to be greeted, then what? Then what? Then what? Right? So I think discipleship pathway is an important concept. All this to say, I think Also, it's critically important for operating budgets at the parish level to give precedence to the staff, resources, and material needed to create this culture. The culture of encounter with Jesus Christ must be the primary focus of the church, of the parish, not being a facility manager or an HR person, right? Everything needs to go back with inspiring discipleship. Step 2, stewardship as an act of worship. What do I mean by this? This is more particular to the role of clergy and pastors. The job being to educate and model the reality that discipleship entails stewardship. Now, as soon as you become a disciple, you're not automatically going to open up your wallet, or you're not automatically going to open up your schedule and start giving of your time. Certainly not. But part of being a disciple is being a steward, right? And I think we need to talk about that. I think in the previous Christendom mode of engagement, everyone kind of knew that. If I go to St. John's, I give in the basket. That's just what we do. I'm talking about more than that, right? Discipleship, having a lived reality, a lived relationship with Christ in the context of a parish, involves stewardship. But that stewardship is more than just opening up my wallet. It's about opening up my heart, opening up my schedule, and giving of time, talent, and treasure. Particularly in the professional realm, as we talked about a bit in the questions of the last session, that there's something that a parishioner can do particularly well. Make that part of your offering, right? If you're a financial professional or an attorney, or you own a construction business, I think we could leverage a lot of those talents. And all too often we get boxed in, I think, to stewardship being financial. All of this giving is an act of worship. It's not a transactional thing. When we give of ourselves and we give of our resources, we worship God. And that casting vision, it's critical for pastors to talk about this. You worship God by opening up what you have and to make that connection in the life of a disciple. This takes time, as does the first step. We're all looking for a silver bullet, right? Everyone's looking for a program or a guru to fit all the needs and to make everything easy. Do X, Y, Z, and you become a center of evangelization. There is no such silver bullet. This takes time, an investment of years, at least 3, probably more like 5. Along those lines, giving, particularly offertory giving, is a lagging indicator of success, meaning that as the parish begins to grow and become more vibrant, become the center of charismatic evangelization, it takes time for the offertory to catch up with it. So we need to be comfortable with a runway. Now, of course, there's the necessity of keeping the lights on, right? There's a necessity of paying your bills, absolutely. But I think in conjunction with parish councils, with qualified lay parishioners, pastors can and should give some time for a runway for this to play out, to change the culture of the parish and to position stewardship as an act of worship. It takes some time. Last week, I was actually speaking with my colleague Melissa and with Father Dennis, and we were talking about something that we've all noticed professionally, at least here in the Archdiocese of Boston, is there seems to be a growing temptation among faithful Catholics, like faithful families, some with many children, but I'm talking about people who are all in with the Lord. There seems to be a growing temptation for them to adopt what I call the Benedict option, which is, let's become insular. We're just going to take care of our family. We love Jesus. He's the center of our lives, but we don't need to get involved with other people because we're well catechized. We know the truth. We're just going to take care of our own tribe. Now, yes, absolutely. Parents are the primary catechists of their children. Sure, that should be a primary focus, but there are plenty well-formed disciples in love with the Lord and his church who need to be called out of their family to give to the larger church, the larger parish, whatever it may be. And really the core is the Great Commission applies to all. The Lord says, go and make disciples, not if you want to or if it's comfortable. He says that to all of us. So I don't have a good answer for that other than I wanted to mention it because it seems to be a growing factor in parish life, and we should be attuned to that, particularly clergy, but laity as well. The third step is create layers of leadership. What do I mean by this? I think for a long time, parish staffs have been viewed as the doer of the things, right? The faith formation leader, the DRE, is the person who catechizes the children. What happens when we lean on lay staff too much to do the thing that they're hired to do is they burn out, right? Even small religious ed programs can have 100 children or more. That is a tall order for one person. So I submit that one of the things we need to refocus is looking at parish staff as the primary equippers of others, not the doers of the things. So the DRE, instead of teaching the class, should invest their time perhaps into training parents or adults in the work of catechesis, right? The operations manager, instead of doing the things of an operations manager, if there are administrative volunteers, they should be equipped to do those things, to pick up the slack, right? So the priest is not all things to all people, and so the staff is not all things to all people. All of us, particularly clergy, should discern where volunteers can support the parish mission. And I think it's important here to be creative. We all know the liturgical duties that laity can assist in. But what about the evangelical, the catechetical, the operational, the administrative, the specialized things? Like I said, the person who owns a construction business or happens to be an engineer, right? Maybe you can leverage their skills for the benefit of the parish. I think we need to be creative of how clergy call upon laity to step up and lead. The point in bold there, focus clerical resources on clerical responsibilities. I mean particularly clergy there. I'd be willing to bet that my friend Father Chris, Letizia there, didn't go to seminary and become a priest to be a small business administrator. Is that correct? That's great. Father Dennis? Yeah, no. Let's allow priests to be priests. Let's allow priests to tend to the sacramental and pastoral needs of their flock. And how we do that is by equipping the laity to pick up the slack where they can. Now, this is not to say that the laity is as important as or can do the same exact things as the priest. Certainly not. We each have our own place in the state of our vocation, which is the beautiful plurality of the church, right? We all have various gifts to offer. But we need to think about how pastors can be free to pastor and focus really on executive leadership and equip lay staffs to do other things. With that is competent staff and volunteers should be empowered to do the thing they're called to do. What I mean by that is micromanaging is no bueno. I think when we all have a tendency to, when we get power, we get control, is to want to keep that. I think we all need to get a lot better at living and let living. Right? Now, that's not to say you see the plane crashing and you just let it crash. Certainly not. But I think it is important when we empower people to allow them to do the job that they've been called to do. All of this really relies on alignment, crystal clear alignment on everyone's duties and responsibilities. Without that, it can become, a chaotic mess. I think there's a lot of temptation for clergy to do it all. And I notice this a lot with younger clergy and those young men who have been ordained 3 years and they're pastors of multi-church collaboratives with thousands of people. I know a lot of these young men who are on fire for the Lord and want to do good things, and that's wonderful. but they can't be everything to everyone. And I think it's contingent upon us to step up and support, and also contingent upon the priest to be comfortable with that and welcome that. The fourth step is investing in development. What I mean here is particularly in reference to non-operating finances, major gifts, capital expenditures. As I said earlier, I think this is kind of the forgotten leg of the stool. So what does this look like? We need to be proactive of taking stock of capital improvement needs in the parish and the parish buildings. Potentially of exploring non-operating income sources, if there are any, and if there are ones that don't threaten the tax-exempt status of the parish. But more so, once we know these things, we know what needs to be done, and we have a systematic plan to pour into the parish plant, right? We need to make financial requests specific, not give to the capital campaign fund so we can do X, Y, or Z. No, Joe and Mary Smith, we'd love for you to consider funding this new faith formation hall. This is where kids will encounter Jesus Christ. Or we need a new handicap ramp so that the folks in the area who are in wheelchair can come to our parish. In my work as a parish business manager, I found that making requests specific, more often than not, resulted in a higher incidence of giving, right? This is one of those things where laity and clergy can really collaborate, where the clergy taking stock of the goals, the long-term goals of the parish and the plant, the physical structure of the parish, and then working with lay folks to really invest in development, not just the annual appeal from the pulpit, from the ambo saying, you know, we need increased offertory. If everybody gave $5 more, we could do this. I think we really need to double down on our major gift development efforts. Financial reports tell a story, and I think pastors need to be able to tell that story transparently. I can't tell you the number of times where I've seen folks or heard of folks that there's a glaring issue in the financial reports, and there's this tendency to want to cover it up. I think we tried that as a church in another area, and it didn't go so well. I think it's important that we take stock of where things are at and tell the story as it is. Parishioners, we're bleeding money. We don't have enough funds to keep this parish hall open. How can we improve that, right? Once we transparently share what's going on, I think this is where, again, laity can shine because they can see it's a specific need, and we really appreciate being told the full story and the transparent story. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that, pastors are out there everywhere covering things up. Certainly not. But I think it's important to really be transparent about the physical needs of the parish. And the final point in investing in development is stewards want to feel welcomed and appreciated. What are we doing to make them feel welcomed and appreciated? We saw in my parish job a lot of benefit from hosting periodic giver appreciation events. Something really simple like getting a pizza, right? And just having folks over saying, thank you for supporting the parish. Or to have periodic opportunities for those who give of their time to thank them. Thank you for being on the parish council. Thank you for being such a wonderful visitor to the homebound, whatever it may be. I think we forget to say thank you sometimes, and it's very important to say thank you to those who are investing in the development of the parish. And then, again, the consistent theme here is casting vision. It's up to the clergy to cast vision for what they want development to look like, what they need, etc. The final step is tracking progress. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm kind of interested in where evangelization and operations meet. And one thing I've noticed is we do a great job of making financial reports. We do a very poor job of creating and obtaining metrics on the success of evangelization efforts. And I think we need to give the same level of investment in pastoral activity as we do to business activity. Data is king. I know we hear data all the time. AI is, if I had $1 for every time I heard AI in the past week, but these things are true. Data can tell us a lot. And I think we need to be more creative of how we leverage that in evangelization efforts. Some examples. I know here in the Archdiocese of Boston, every October, there's a weekend mass count. Do that every week if we're not doing it already. And make sure it's accurate, right? Invest in that. Also count each week or at each event, how many volunteers were engaged in producing that event? What does it look like? And then maybe take a look at, well, what is the average gift per weekend mass attendee? If I have 350 people coming to my 4 masses and, I'm taking in $2,000 a weekend or whatever it is, what is that per head? And if I break that down, then maybe I can make a pathway to improve it, right? Also, faith formation attendance every week. Yeah, that's an administrative burden, but I think we can tell a lot of, okay, why is attendance on Tuesday nights so poor? Oh, well, there's a hockey practice that night, These are just a couple examples, but I think it behooves us as a church to create key performance indicators, KPIs. What does success look like in the work of evangelization at the parish level? And then maybe consider making a data dashboard. My hope was to kind of make one for you today, but unfortunately, time got away from me. But this is something that can be done simply in Excel, right? Of inputting these various metrics to generate a picture of what things look like from a parish evangelization standpoint. And again, this is a really great opportunity for clergy and laity to collaborate and determine what metrics are important. I'd be willing to bet in most parishes, there's someone with business experience who deals with KPIs on a day-to-day basis. So let's leverage their talent. So I'm not suggesting that you need to subscribe to my 5-point plan. That's kind of how I view things. But I hope in that exercise, we started to look at maybe some novel ways of clergy and laity working together. And I think that's crucial for the future of our church. Some tips and takeaways that I've kind of surmised, and then I'd love to kind of open up the floor for discussion. The current landscape in our church is rife with challenges, but I think these challenges provide unique opportunities for clergy and laity to partner together, as we are all here today. I'm shocked that in 2 weeks we have a room full of people, and that tells me that this is something we need to talk about, and we need to talk about more, and not just navel-gazing, like making action plans. So it's wonderful that we're all here today. While we respect our vocational and ontological differences, meaning the ordained and non-ordained, we must be bold and double down on the work of facilitating encounters with Jesus Christ. I said, if you remember nothing else, buy the book, do that. But if you remember nothing else, remember that as a parish, our primary goal is to facilitate encounters with Jesus Christ in everything we do. And we can't lose sight of that. Clergy should be increasingly challenged to cast vision and leverage the skills of the laity, especially those ordered to evangelization and administration. And I think really bold, novel ideas such as what Kevin shared in the Diocese of Fall River are important discussions to have. Laity must embrace the missionary vocation to become fishers of family, as Pope Leo told us, and to cultivate God's unique gifts to be faithful stewards and to support sustainable parish life. And finally, and most importantly, I think it was John Paul II, St. John Paul II, who said, do not be afraid, go out into the deep. We need to embrace the challenges where they're at, and rather than just conceptualizing, we need to start doing more. And it's okay if things don't work out, but the more that we do, the more that we work together and explore novel ways of pushing forward, I think the better we are as a church. So thank you for your time and attention this morning. I appreciate it. And I'd love to open the floor up to questions and have a bit of a discussion before we move to the panel discussion.